Hello, and welcome to Gilmer Grown, a podcast produced by Gilmer County Library that covers the history, people, and community of Gilmer County, Georgia. The role of the library in the U.S. has evolved over time. Like so many other things, thanks in part to our constant access to information from anywhere. I'm Marcus Driscoll, and today I hope to get some answers about what a library is and what a library should be. I'm joined by my coworker, Glenda Garland. Glenda has been with the library since 1989. She retired in 2011, but returned to work in 2019 part-time. She's most active in our genealogy section, and she's always willing to help our patrons on their mission to uncover their family roots. Thank you for joining me, Glenda.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So, Glenda, we were just talking that this is the first time you've ever done a podcast or anything of the sort.
Exactly, the first time.
Yeah, and I imagine not many people, have done the sort of thing. But whenever I asked you, I was very thankful that you were able to join me.
Well,
you were willing to come with me on this adventure.
I'm willing to help in any way, anything that works for the library.
And of course, and the main reason that I wanted to ask you to join is because whenever I first started here, a little over a year ago at this point, you were very instrumental in my training, whether you realize it or not. And a lot of the patrons that have been coming here for a long time, I've come to realize, know you by name, just for the fact that you've been here.
Been here
probably
so
the longest.
long.
Yeah. And then you're also one of the most helpful people, if not the most helpful people.
Wow, thank you.
Well, yeah, of course. I don't mean to fluster you with all of that, but it's true. That's one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on our first episode.
Okay.
Let's see. So I want to get stuff started off, just kind of set the tone for the episode.
Yeah.
How long have you lived in Gilmer County?
Well, all my life, I'm one of the Gilmer County native people.
Mm-hmm.
I've been here all my life.
Okay.
You want a number or?
Yeah. If you want to share, I don't
A
want
long
to force
time. Let's just say a long time.
Okay, that's fine. What's kept you here so long?
Well, I never really had a reason to have to leave or an interest or an opportunity to leave. I just had my own family and was busy raising my kids. And my family had been here since the mid-1800s, so I just never had any intention of leaving. Never came up.
Okay.
And I like it here.
Oh yeah, I do too.
I like it here.
I think that a lot of people my age, at least whenever I was in school, a lot of people had a lot of ambitions of leaving, and it seemed like they didn't really care where they were heading. They just wanted to go out and do something new. And I completely understand that impulse. That's something
I do too.
That's something that I wanted to do at the time. But then after I got out of Gilmer for a little while, I really started to miss it. And I'm very glad that I'm back.
So. A lot of people did that. They left for a while, especially in your generation. They, like you said, they couldn't wait to get out, leave, but then later on they came back home. But in my generation, you just pretty much stayed wherever you were.
Sure.
Wherever you were born and raised, unless you had a reason that you had to leave, you just stayed.
Right. And I think a lot of it, too, is stuff that people tend to take for granted. I know that I did. Whenever I first decided that I wanted to move out, I actually moved down to Muskogee and then came back up to Gilmer. But the thing that I missed the most was the feeling of a community.
Oh, yeah.
And knowing my neighbors, even if it's not, first name basis or something, just the familiarity.
We've always had that here.
Right, definitely. So did you always want to be a librarian? How'd you get started?
Well, that's my favorite story, my Ruth Hamrick story, I call it, of how I came to be at the library. I don't know if I've ever told you. I've told lots of people. I never actually set out to be a librarian. I've just always loved to read, and I would come to the library as I got to be an adult, and I would come to the library a lot because I always loved to read, and I would go when I felt bad. It was like a place that I always felt better at. When I'd have a bad day, I'd go to the library and I'd feel better. But at that time, of course, the library was a lot smaller than it is now. It was in the part of the cannery building where the elementary school is now back then. But in 1977, they finished the building on Dalton Street and moved into there. So Ruth Hamrick was the library manager for a long time. And there may be some people here who still remember her. She, like I said, had been the manager for a long time. She was also instrumental, I believe, in getting Head Start program to the county. But right before the Christmas holidays that year in 1988, I had went into the library one day at lunchtime, and the other staff person who worked there, they only had 3 people, her and 2 other people that worked there, they were gone to lunch, and she came out to the circulation desk to check my books out, and she leaned across the desk and she said, "You know, you're one of our very best library people." And I said, "Well, thank you. It's my favorite place." And she said, "How would you like to work at the library?" And I said, "Well, I didn't know you were hiring anybody. Are you going to hire somebody?" And she followed up and explained that the other lady that worked there at the time, Judy Griggs, was about to have twins and was going to have to go on a maternity leave. And Miss Hamrick wanted somebody to fill in for Judy while she was on maternity leave. And she said, "I think I'd like to have you work at the library." So she gave me an application form and took it home, filled it out, and long story short, she hired me for Judy's position while she was gone on her maternity leave. But the other guy that worked there at the time, he told me later on that she had been watching everybody that came into the library on a regular basis to pick somebody out to work that she wanted to work in the library. And she told me several times, she'd say, "You know you're my chosen one." So at the end of the 6 weeks maternity leave, Judy decided not to come back, and I got to stay. And I was lucky enough to be there for almost 23 years.
Wow. Yeah.
But at the same time, Miss Hamrick also had her eye on Anita Summers, who had just earned her library degree at the time and was teaching somewhere. And Miss Hamrick was thinking about retiring herself that year. So when July of '89 rolled around, she arranged for Anita to take over as manager.
Gotcha. Okay.
And she retired, and the rest is history.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Anita was our most recent executive director for the Sequoia Regional Library System, and she's just recently retired. So that goes to show how far Glenda's roots go.
Well, Ruth Hamrick chose me and Anita, and we worked as a team for like 20 years or more.
Wow.
Until she went on to be the director.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's how I came to be at the library.
That's a great origin story.
I love that story.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, and it also, to me, it also accentuates just how things are different. I couldn't imagine anymore, for me at least, being a regular somewhere, especially patient at a library, and someone saying, "You want to work here? You want a job?"
Well, I've made the comment to several people, well, I was there so much they had to hire me, but I just felt like that was where I belonged.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, so since you've been with the library so long, I feel like you have a greater perspective on some things, especially this question that I'm about to ask. In your opinion, what's the role of the library in our community?
Well, I think the library is a very important part and a great asset to our community, to any community, if you've got a good library. The library's primary goal is to promote learning and foster a love of reading, and it provides a place where you can go and you can not only check out hardcover books, but now you can get e-books, large print materials. You can get all kinds of information that you might need and wouldn't be able to find anywhere else. Now we have access to the computers, internet, Wi-Fi, check out games, puzzles, homeschool materials. We've got meeting rooms for the public and all kinds of programs. And we've got the Friends of the Library volunteers that manage our little bookstore. And when the library was on Dalton Street in downtown, we would have hundreds of people stop by during the summer and fall just asking for directions in LJ. They'd want to know where to get to a certain place or ask about where was the local points of interest and things to do. They came to us because they thought we would know what to tell them. At the Apple Festival, we would have people lined up down the sidewalk to use our bathrooms. there was no public restrooms in the downtown area,
Right.
and we'd have folks lined up out the street to get in to use our bathrooms.
Yeah, just one of many services the library
That
can
was another
fulfill.
service. So I think it's a really, really important part of any community.
Yeah, I agree with you. Do you think that the role's changed since you started working here?
Yes, tremendously.
In what ways?
Well, when I was hired back then, the library was so small, we didn't have, nothing was, of course, computerized at that time, and we didn't offer really anything other than just checking out a few books. And like I said, Miss Hamrick was the manager, and for people that didn't know her, don't remember her, she was very strong-willed lady. She wanted to run things her way. And even though we were technically part of the Sequoia system, she kind of ran things her way and didn't pay much attention to what they wanted her to do. And
Okay, she was a rogue.
she, like I said, she was really intimidating. A lot of people were kind of scared of her. So you didn't see a whole lot of people come in, for that reason. You might see 10 or 12 people come in a day and check out a few books. But we did have the summer reading program, though, in the summer. But the turning point, I feel like, in our library's growth was when Anita came in 1989, because she immediately focused on promoting the library in the public and getting people to come in and growing and offering more things. And it was kind of hard to do in the beginning because we didn't have the staff or the space or things. She would do story time herself. She started doing the little story time programs, and I'd go in and sit on the floor with the kids while she did that. But she made it a point to change some of the ways that we were operating and trying to get more people to come in. She worked real close with the administration in the library system. In 1991, we underwent a renovation project, and they added a little area onto the back of the library. We got another room added on for our genealogy department. We ran the library for 3 months out of the lobby that summer in the middle of all the construction, people
Wow, yeah.
coming in and out.
Yeah. I'm sure that's a little familiar to the people in Jasper right now.
Oh, yes.
the grab and go.
I know what they're going through in Jasper right now, but we did that until we got our building renovated, and then they started trying to hire more staff. We'd get another person occasionally, and actually had job titles and job descriptions at that time, and I was what they called the reference person back then, which is comparable to what you do now. They just call it something different. And I was the assistant manager then until I retired. And the library just kept growing and growing. But Anita made it a point to get involved in the community groups and the civic groups and organizations, and just to bring awareness to the public about what we offered. And then the project, when we got this building that we're in now built, that was a process that took several years of trying to raise the funds to get the building going, and it was a lot of hard work on behalf of her and the trustee boards and all our funding agencies. We had patrons signing petitions to support the sales tax option that they were trying to get passed in order for us to get our local money. It took a village to get this done, and I'm so proud of our library. I love our library.
Oh yeah, I all the time I hear from people who are from out of town or just visiting, something like that they love our library, and it's a beautiful building. Yeah,
they say that all the time.
Constantly.
I am so pleased when somebody says that about our library.
Yes, yeah.
Because we work hard to keep it that way.
Yes,
we all do.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned getting the genealogy section built.
Yes.
And this was back on Dalton Street. But
Yes.
is that kind of your origin in the realm of genealogy, or when did that start?
Kind of. And I'm not an expert by any means about genealogy. I've just been here longer than any of the other staff. And a lot of the people that we've had work at the library over the years, they weren't from Gilmer County, so they didn't really know anything about the history of the county or that. But I think the beginning of when I got interested in genealogy and how it worked was when a lady came into the Dalton Street location one time, and she had a big notebook of research she had done on her family, and she wanted to donate it to the library, several generations of her family, and it turned out it was my family too, the Stover family. That was my maiden name. I just thought, well, how neat that she's got my ancestors traced back to Switzerland, and I got interested in it. But we started building up the collection. Anita would purchase materials, and the Genealogy Society was getting started about that time. I got acquainted with all those people. Their primary goal in the beginning was to preserve as many of the county records as they could, so that it would not be wasted and lost. And they transcribed a lot of things and donated it to the library. Worked really hard. And their first big fundraising project was the publication and sale of the Heritage Book, which a lot of counties were doing at that time, where you would let the public write articles about their family and submit that and pictures and whatnot to the Heritage Book. And they would use the library meeting room space as a work area when they were getting it ready to go to the publisher. So I got acquainted with a lot of them and learned a lot from them. And one of our trustees for a long time was a man named Dan Westmoreland, who I said was like a walking history book. He had grown up in Ellijay during the Depression. The man was POW during World War II, and he could tell you anything about Ellijay. So I met a lot of folks like that over the years and learned a lot from them. Plus, I think Gilmer County history is just really interesting, you know. This whole area was part of the Cherokee Nation in the beginning, and we started collecting articles and info about just things in the county of a historical nature, like the courthouse, which was first a hotel. We had a gold mine here, the big White Path Resort. We had Fort Hetzel, where they held the Cherokees prior to the Trail of Tears. All that's just really interesting, I think.
Yeah, I think so
to
too.
know where you came from and what went on.
Yeah, definitely. That's part of the reason that I wanted to start this podcast is as almost like a more accessible resource for people who are interested in learning more about our county. And you know, my nephew's he's got to the age now where he's more interested in local history and stuff like that. And so him telling me a couple stories about things, he's 15, and I was like, I've never even heard of that. And of course there's some stuff that I was able to share with him too, but it made me realize that for as much that I was taught in school about state history and world history and everything like that, which is still very important, made me realize how little I knew about my own backyard, so to speak. So like I said, making this a more accessible medium for people. If somebody wanted to dive in a little deeper, do you have any recommendations for must-reads, people who are interested in the history of Gilmer?
Well, the ultimate history book of Gilmer County, in my opinion, is the Annals of Upper Georgia, centered in Gilmer County, which was written by George Gordon Ward. It's not in print anymore. It's hard to find. A lot of people bought copies back in the day when he published it, and it used to be for sale at the drugstore and several places around town. The library even sold it for a long time. But after his widow died, we weren't able to get any more copies, and that's the ultimate history of Gilmer County. Tells you how it was formed and just a lot of info about it. He has a chronology in the back of the book that tells you from like the late 1800s, just all kind of interesting little tidbits and things that happened on different dates. It's not indexed really good, but it's a wonderful book. Lawrence Stanley wrote several books, but he grew up in the eastern part of the county in the mountains, and so a lot of his books deal with that area of the county, but they're hard to find too. And then the Gilmer County Genealogical Society, they have published the Heritage Book and several other books that are really interesting about the history of the county and its families. And they put all their newsletters on their website. I've been really pleased with their newsletters recently. Barbara Dover's doing a really good job writing their newsletters. And
Yeah.
so, and there's the video of the day in Ellijay, which is on YouTube, and somebody filmed downtown Ellijay in 1953.
Yeah.
So you can see what it looked like.
I
That's
remember
interesting.
when I first started here, and you told me about that. And
Yeah, I didn't know it was on YouTube though. Till you told me
Yeah.
it was on YouTube.
I was able to find it on YouTube, and I was like, oh, wow, this is great. Because before, we just had it on the VHS tape.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you're more high tech than I am, so you know. But it is on YouTube, and you can watch that.
Yeah.
And the Historical Society has a Tabor House Museum over in downtown Ellijay near the courthouse, and they have a lot of historical displays and things in there. They're a different group than the Genealogy Society, but they all work together for the same goal.
Right. There's a lesson to be learned there.
Lesson to be learned. Everybody's got to work together.
Well, speaking of Ellijay, a day in the life of Ellijay back in the day, what's the biggest difference between being a young adult in Ellijay in your life and then Gilmer County now?
Now, you're referring to being a young adult then and being a young adult now?
Well, being a young adult then, and then being present day Glenda Garland.
Oh, okay. Well, first and foremost difference back then, you had no social media. You didn't have any electronic devices whatsoever. Sure. We're talking a long time ago when I was a young adult. There was none of that. Nobody had anything like that. My parents had a telephone when I was a teenager, but it was the old party lines when... Have you heard of party lines?
Yes, yeah.
You could eavesdrop on your neighbors and hear each other's conversation. We had a television, but there was no remote control. You could get 3 stations unless you went out and turned the antenna. We were so deprived. Nowadays, it seems like every 12-year-old's got a cell phone, but back then, kids weren't exposed to a lot of the things that they are now, the rest of the world and all that. The only friends you had were your classmates and your relatives, and you didn't have Facebook friends that are all over the country and the world. Most teenagers didn't have cars until they were grown. I don't remember going into what I called town, Ellijay, so much when I was growing up. I went to school out on Highway 52 East at Oakland Elementary School right on up till the 9th grade when we went to high school. The high school had a football and basketball teams back then, but there was no organized athletic programs or wasn't a lot for kids to do back then, for young people to do. Ellijay had a roller skating rink at one time and a small theater, which was located where the Canterbury restaurant is. But on the positive side of being a young adult now, young people know all about technology. They've traveled more and seen more of the world. They've met more different kinds of people.
Yeah.
And now they're encouraged to further their education and be whatever they want to be.
Right.
So that's all positive
things
that have happened.
Definitely.
Since I was a young adult.
And obviously, I don't have the same perspective as you do. But I mean, even being 25 and living out of the county for only 5 years, I've already seen noticeable change. And it's, to me, I wonder, I don't know, even whenever I was younger, I thought about this before, where it's almost like a ship of Theseus type thing, where things change slowly over time until eventually is it what it originally was? Does it keep the same spirit as it once had? And I think and like I said, in my time, the county's definitely changed from how I remember growing up here originally. And not everything's been for the worse. There's a lot of positive changes that I've noticed around here too. Do you? Oh
yeah, we've got positive changes. Yeah, a friend of mine who used to do real estate appraising. He once told me that he thought the beginning of all the change in our area was when the Zell Miller Mountain Parkway, which was completed 515. He attributed a lot of the growth and change in North Georgia to that, which kind of made sense when he said it. I don't know if that's true or not, but it did make access easier to all the counties with the 4-lane, and I felt like that played a part too in all the new people, residents moving in here, and which led to new businesses that we have and the growth that we've experienced in population numbers here. We have larger school systems. You've got all kinds of recreation programs. We've got a food pantry, animal shelter. Got lots more doctors here now, and even though our hospital closed, we still have access to health care. And nearby we have the branch of the Dalton College where young people can go to college now and not have to commute. People seem to be more anxious now and interested in getting involved in things and to know what's going on and be aware and give their input and all that. I think that's good. And then we have the Apple Capital, which brings in all the revenue every year. And it seems like Ellijay's become the hot spot of North Georgia.
Yeah. I remember I was actually working in Jasper before I came back up here to Gilmer.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of people who would come into the coffee shop that I worked at. I was a barista for a while, and they would complain. They would say it's turning into the new Metro Atlanta. And,
Cherokee County's creeping on up, they'd say.
It's interesting to see just how big Blue Ridge got just north of here, just with their cabin tourism and things like that.
You can't get through Blue Ridge anymore.
Right, and then we've seen that kind of creep down into Ellijay. There's been a lot of rental properties and Airbnbs and stuff like that, and then we do see a little bit of that creep from the metro also, and so it's almost like being invaded from both sides. But like I said, I mean, it's not all bad. It's just different, I feel like, and it
is a different time. It is a different time, and I don't blame people for wanting to come up here.
No, absolutely
vacation
not.
And weekend
Right.
and all. It's a nice place, and I don't know that there's any way we can slow anything down.
Right.
So we're just going to have to go with it.
Well, yeah, I definitely agree too. I don't blame anybody for wanting to move up here.
No,
because it's great, I don't think that people moving here is. I don't think people moving here is a problem as much as maybe some others would like to say.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to come back.
Exactly. How long were you gone before you came back?
You're flipping the script on me. You're asking me questions.
I'll ask you a question.
I lived in Columbus, Georgia for 5 to 6 years.
And could you see a big difference when you moved back up here?
Oh, yeah.
In Ellijay,
Yeah. Well, I mean, definitely just with all the new industry that was back and a lot more traffic. But
a lot of traffic.
But also at the same time, it seemed like a lot of the things that Gilmer had that drew me back to it were exemplified more. It seemed like the people who were coming in and decided to make Gilmer their home, who hadn't lived here previously. The reason that this place is so appealing to them, to me at least, is what it seems, is that those are values that they also share. And so being somewhere where that is exemplified and raised up, there's a big sense of community, more so than whenever I left initially. People are just friendly.
Well, that's what you hear from all the newer people that I've met and gotten acquainted with. They love it here. They say everybody's so nice and friendly, and that's what they want.
Right. Yeah.
I think we're just being like we always were, but maybe they didn't have that where they came from,
Well, I mean, that's definitely the case for me whenever I was living in Columbus for a while. Like I said, there's just something that I missed was that sense of community. I didn't feel like I was a part of something larger than myself whenever I was living there, but also the people just weren't as personal, and I didn't realize that was something that I would miss until I did.
I used to ask a lot of people that became library patrons who had moved here from, say, New York or somewhere. I'd say, well, what brought you to Ellijay? How did you decide on Ellijay? And they'd say, well, we used to come through here on our way to Florida on vacation, or we had relatives in Atlanta, and we just liked this area. And they would choose to move here.
Yeah.
I've had people come in the old library on Dalton Street one time and look around. They wanted to see the library before they moved here.
Right.
It was that important to them. I thought that was great.
That is great.
that they wanted to check out the library before they moved here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Something that you spoke on a little earlier, I'm backtracking a little.
Okay.
Talking about, being younger and not going into town much. Something that was a little bit of a culture shock for me after leaving here was that I genuinely had no idea that this is a thing. That people from more like urban areas or outside of rural areas, they don't use the expression going into town.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought that was universal.
No, I guess they don't understand. What are you talking about, going into town? Well, that's what we called Ellijay when I was, which I live 5 miles outside town right now, but to me, town is Ellijay.
Right, yeah, exactly. To me, going into town is I have to run by Walmart or something. And I would, my friends or my roommates in college would give me a hard time if I was saying, I'm running into town, do you need me to get anything?
Yeah.
But like I said, I had no idea that was a regional thing.
See, my mother didn't learn to drive until I was a teenager, and then I left home and started my own family shortly after that. So I just didn't come into town much, till I had to go to high school. That was my first big thing about coming to town every day, was to go to high school. It was different.
Was it?
Yeah, it was different.
So you didn't come into town much, and then whenever you started high school, almost every day was
everybody
it like
rode the school bus and went to town. Your parents didn't take you to town back then. You rode the bus.
Right.
Take you to school, I'm sorry. They didn't take you to school. You rode the bus. And even then it was down Highway 5 South. It wasn't actually in town.
Right.
There was the high school used to be in downtown Ellijay before I was old enough to go to high school. It was downtown.
Oh, wow, I never knew that.
Yeah.
The furthest I knew back was that Gilmer Middle School. I think now it's the Larry Walker Educational Center.
Yeah. No, across from where the police station is, in Ellijay, as you start up towards Old 5 North, on the right there was the high school.
Huh.
It's torn down now. There was a big gymnasium behind it.
You learn something new every day.
Yeah, that was where the high school was. Yeah.
Well, Glenda, we're just about to run out of time. And before we go, I just want to bring up a quote that you have in Mountain Heritage, which is the newsletter from the Gilmer County Genealogical Society. It's from Volume 9, Issue 4. You said, "I hope people realize what an asset the library is to the county and the community. There were times that it was very challenging, but I liked my work far more than most people do. Librarians do not work for the money. They do it for the love of the library, books, reading, and information." And I thought that was great, and I just wanted to highlight that.
Well, thank you for quoting that, because that is true. I really feel like that. You have to really love the library and love what you do. Great people over the years. I couldn't tell you all the co-workers I've had and that came and went, but I always felt I was lucky enough to be here during all this change too. That when we moved the library, for instance, that was, boy, a challenge. You don't know what
I'm sure,
is till you move a library.
I'm sure.
But we were so happy to get in this building. It was just such a dream for a long time that we had, and so many people had worked so hard. We were so excited. We couldn't wait to get here. And I feel like I've had the dream job all my life of getting to do what I really love to do, because not many people enjoy what they're doing for a living.
Yeah, this is my favorite job I've ever had. It's the best job I've ever had.
Hang in here, Marcus.
I will. Oh yeah. But I feel a similar way. It's in a different way, but lucky to be working for the library in a time where things are changing, especially for Gilmer, like we were talking about with new people and new industry, and Gilmer finding its identity almost again. I feel very, very blessed, very lucky to be here for that.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here with us.
Glenda, thank you so much for joining me on our first episode of Gilmer Grown. Hope you had a great time.
I did. I could talk about the library all day.
Let's see. Do you have any parting bits of wisdom that you'd like to share, or anything you'd like to say?
Can't think of anything. You said it all when you quoted my story in the genealogy newsletter, because I really feel that way. But thank you.
Of course.